The next item of business is finance, portfolio questions. Question 1 has been withdrawn. Question 2, Maurice Golden, please.
To ask the Scottish Government what consideration it is giving to varying landfill tax rates and bans during the extended period before a biodegradable municipal waste to landfill ban.
Minister Ben Macpherson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Rates and bans for Scottish landfill tax are intended to support a more circular economy and the delivery of our ambitious targets to reduce waste, increase recycling and cut waste going to landfill. As confirmed in the Scottish Budget, work is currently underway to explore the role that Scottish landfill tax could play in encouraging a further shift away from the landfilling of biodegradable municipal waste. A further announcement will be made when this work is complete.
Maurice Golden.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Can the Minister confirm that the woeful record of failure by this government in meeting waste targets leading to artificially high landfill tax revenues is more a muddle than a fiddle?
Minister.
As I've said, work is underway to explore any further changes in landfill tax. However, in general, we expect local authorities to discharge their statutory obligations using their existing funding. And in the case of transition to the ban on biodegradable municipal waste to landfill, there are no plans to review or change that arrangement as things stand. But as I said in my original answer, a further announcement will be made in terms of what is in the budget, in terms of exploring the role that Scottish landfill tax could play in encouraging a further shift away from the landfilling of biodegradable municipal waste.
Emma Harper.
Landfill tax is one of the many important tools which can be used to incentivise a reduction in waste. Can the Minister outline additional measures in the Scottish Budget that will support a reduction in waste and an increase in recycling?
Minister.
As part of our response to the global climate emergency, the Scottish Budget will continue to support the transition to a circular economy, as I said, cutting waste and carbon emissions and opening up economic opportunities. This includes the development of a deposit return scheme for single-use drinks containers that will reduce litter and make high-quality recycled materials available to the Scottish economy, as well as activity to support innovation in reducing waste and developing the circular economy through the Circular Economy Investment Fund. And we are also, of course, committed to introducing a circular economy bill during this parliamentary session.
Question 3, Donald Cameron.
To ask the Scottish Government how it plans to utilise the Scotland Reserve in its 2020-21 budget.
Cabinet Secretary Kate Forbes.
For 2020-21, we anticipate utilising £168 million in total from the Scotland Reserve, and that comprises of £30 million of resource, £5 million of capital and £32 million of financial transactions from the existing reserve balance, and £101 million of resource underspend from 1920. So that total compares with £143 million originally stated in the Scottish Budget 2020-21 document, with a change due to an additional £25 million resource underspend this year following updated forecasts. Therefore, there is no change to the forecast balance at the end of 2020-21.
Donald Cameron.
Thank you. In this week's Finance Committee, the Cabinet Secretary said that, and I quote, we should add to the reserve in order to increase the government's ability to manage the inherent volatility under the fiscal framework. Given that the Scottish Government faces a black hole of over £500 million in next year's budget, how does she intend to build up the Scotland Reserve further?
Well, as the member knows, the resource, capital and financial transactions underspends every financial year since 2017-2018 have been deposited in the reserve, and it's quite right that we build up the reserve. But the fact of the matter is that the fiscal framework is insufficient to allow the Scottish Government to manage the volatility and the uncertainty that's inherent in our financial position in terms of meeting some of the forecast error challenges, which, it's worth remembering, is about Westminster clawing back resource because of forecast error.
Kenneth Gibson, briefly.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. After the delay to this year's UK budget, it's clear that more flexibility is needed when setting Scotland's budget. Can the Cabinet Secretary please advise the Chamber what engagement the Scottish Government has had with the UK Government regarding increasing the limits on borrowing and Scotland Reserve powers, given the likely post-Brexit economic turbulence we are going to face in the coming years?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the member is quite right in highlighting that, and we've been seeking immediate changes to our borrowing and reserve limits given the volatility inherent in the fiscal framework. My predecessor wrote to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury in September 2019 requesting an increase to those limits. We've yet to receive a formal response to that request, but we continue to discuss this matter at ministerial level, and as recently as last week I raised the matter in an introductory call with the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, and I'll follow that up in our bilateral meeting.
Question 4, Bill Kidd.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. I don't want to reiterate things, but to ask the Scottish Government what engagement it has had with Treasury Ministers regarding the impact of the UK budget on Scotland's finances.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, my predecessor and I have engaged with Treasury Ministers on numerous occasions to highlight the challenges caused by a late UK budget, challenges that were recognised on a cross-party basis. Despite that, the UK budget will not take place until the 11th of March, and I have received no indication of its likely content. The Chief Secretary of the Treasury has agreed to attend a meeting of finance ministers from the UK Government and devolved administrations on the 10th of March, but has noted that the information he can share on the UK budget will be constrained by market sensitivities.
Bill Kidd.
Thank you very much for that reply. With Barnett consequentials having to be estimated on commitments made during the 2019 general election, does the Cabinet Secretary agree that this unnecessary delay has shown a complete disregard for Scotland's budget process?
Cabinet Secretary.
Indeed, I do. It's not just a complete disregard for this government, but it's a complete disregard for the Scottish communities and businesses who rely on the certainty that comes with the information in the budget. In order to combat that, we have presented the budget on the basis of the best available information, including provisional block grant adjustments and the Conservative Party manifesto from last year. But that does increase the financial risk around the budget and the risk of larger fiscal framework reconciliations in later years. The lack of engagement by the UK Government, I believe, does illustrate a complete disregard for devolution and the interests of the Scottish communities.
Rhoda Grant, followed by Patrick Harvey.
Thank you. Can I ask if there is additional consequentials from the UK budget? Will the Cabinet Secretary speak to other parties, have a consultation with them and indeed the whole Parliament before bringing spending proposals back to this chamber?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the member will know that in terms of any changes to our budget in year, those are taken through the Finance Committee, and there's scrutiny in that process at the autumn budget revision and the spring budget revision. And subject to the level of difference when the UK Government announces its own budget next week, we would intend to honour that process as we've done every year.
Patrick Harvey.
Looking ahead, has the new Chancellor given any indication to the Scottish Government that this cart before horse approach will not be taken again in subsequent years? And does the Cabinet Secretary think that there is, at an official level in Whitehall, an understanding of the catastrophically chaotic impact of the delay that they've imposed on us this year?
Cabinet Secretary.
I am not particularly optimistic that that has been recognised. And at the quadrilateral next week, I intend, along with the other devolved governments, on making the case at how much volatility and uncertainty a delayed UK Government budget has introduced. This is about taxpayers, it's about our communities, it's about our public services that need to rely on the certainty that comes through the budget. And in terms of official engagement at Treasury and our own officials, we have been repeatedly referred to the Conservative Party manifesto for the best available estimates of what we should include in terms of consequentials, which is no way of setting a budget.
5 not lodged. Question 6, Ian Gray.
To ask the Scottish Government for what reason East Lothian Council's provisional revenue allocation per head is the 4th lowest in Scotland.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the local government finance settlement is distributed in full using the needs-based formula that's discussed and agreed with COSLA. So all local authorities, including East Lothian, receive their formula share of the total funding available, which will see East Lothian Council receive an above-average increase in support for revenue services of 6.5% or £11.5 million in 2020-21. The Scottish Government is always open to suggestions to improve the funding formula, and should the member or the council wish to propose a change to the current formula, that would need to be raised with COSLA and through COSLA in the first instance.
Ian Gray.
Well, I understand that there is a formula, but the problem is that it is not working for East Lothian. The simple fact is that not enough account is being taken of East Lothian's almost unique rate of population growth. Growth fuelled by the building of over 10,000 houses required of the Council's local development plan by the Scottish Government. So will the Scottish Government not find some way to reflect this so the Council can fund the infrastructure needed for this expansion demanded by Scottish ministers?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, of course, we're supporting population growth through a whole range of different ways, including our ambitious affordable housing building programme, which sees £843 million included in this year's budget. But I repeat the point, if the member believes that there should be a change in the methodology, that would have to be agreed with all 32 different local authorities who would all have a case to make on their unique circumstances, and therefore that should be raised with COSLA, through COSLA, and if he does that, then I'd be happy to speak to COSLA.
Question 7, Michelle Ballantyne.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what strategy you have in place to ensure local authorities are sufficiently funded.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the Scottish Government works in partnership with COSLA on behalf of all 32 local authorities to negotiate a financial settlement that ensures that local authorities can continue to provide the high-quality frontline services that the people of Scotland expect and deserve. And as I confirmed at stage 1 of the budget bill, the Scottish Government is providing local government with a substantial funding package worth in total £11.4 billion, which includes an increase to support for spending on core revenue services of £589 million, or 5.8% in 2020-21.
Michelle Ballantyne.
Thank you for that answer, but figures released by the Scottish Government last week show that local authority debt has risen by nearly 15% in just 5 years. It now sits at more than £18 billion, while Scottish councils run a deficit of £53 million, prompting COSLA to call for more funding in this year's budget. The amount of money pledged by the Scottish Government to councils this year is £6 billion less than their debt alone. With central funding is so low, how does the Scottish Government propose to help councils cut their debt without relying on further council tax increases?
Cabinet Secretary.
I tell you, the fastest way to end austerity is to ensure that austerity is ended at source, and that means ending Tory austerity. Chancellors have promised an end to austerity in 2018. They failed to deliver. Promised an end in 2019. Failed to deliver. And we'll wait and see for next week. But in terms of how local authorities use their resources, our policy is to ensure that local authorities' spending is to allow local authorities the financial freedom to operate independently. They must use their resources as efficiently as possible and deliver services effectively to ensure taxpayers get the best possible value. And in this year's budget settlement, we are ensuring that local authorities receive a total funding package of £11.4 billion to do that.
Richard Lyle.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Cabinet Secretary, Scotland's annual budget has fallen in real terms by 2.8% over the last decade. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree that when it comes to ensuring sufficient funding for local authorities, Tory MSPs should be joining us in calling for this UK Government cut to be reversed? Tory hypocrisy is outstanding and astounding in this Parliament.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I would agree with Richard Lyle that I would call on all parties in the Parliament, including the Scottish Conservatives, to call for an end of UK austerity, and any influence that they might have on their colleagues in London to ensure that the UK budget next week delivers for Scotland would be welcome. Ensuring that they deliver on their manifesto promises would be a good start.
Question 8, David Torrance.
To ask the Scottish Government what measures in the draft budget aim to boost economic growth, improve productivity and support improvements in innovation.
Minister.
The Scottish budget includes a range of measures that will foster inclusive economic growth, raise productivity and improve innovation. For example, we have pledged £201 million worth of funding for city, region and growth deals during 2020-21. There will be £220 million of fresh seed funding for the Scottish National Investment Bank, contributing to our commitment to invest £2 billion over 10 years. And the National Manufacturing Institute for Scotland will receive £26.5 million worth of funding.
David Torrance.
I thank the Minister for that answer. The Minister will be aware that Fife Energy Park, my constituency, supports the renewable sector. Can the Minister confirm how much investment is being made in hydrogen technology as an alternative source of fuel?
Minister.
We are currently undertaking a wide-ranging assessment of hydrogen, its various applications and how it may contribute to achieving our ambitious target of net zero emissions by 2045, and also how it can provide social and economic value for the country. Informed by the outcomes of this assessment and other companion pieces of work, we will publish a Scottish Government Hydrogen Action Plan in 2020. The potential contribution of hydrogen in Scotland's transition to a low-carbon economy was further recognised in the recent Scottish budget, which committed £10 million for hydrogen for heat demonstration projects.
Alexander Burnett.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Can I ask the Scottish Government how it measures the return on its support for innovation centres, and if those centres which offer exceptional returns, such as the Data Lab, will receive additional support?
Minister.
We recognised in the Scottish budget that innovation improves productivity, competitiveness and growth, and we will therefore continue to support business investment in research and development with our target doubling of spending of £870 million. And that happened in 2015 to £1.7 billion in 2025, meeting our commitment to increase grant support for business research and development from 22 million to 37 million per annum in 3 years, 2018 to 2021. With regard to a specific point that the member raises, I think they would perhaps be better directed to the Minister for Innovation. I would encourage him to take those points up with him directly.
Thank you. That concludes questions on finance. There will be a short pause before we move on to the next item of business.